It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you.
Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. It's another episode of Frontline Friday with my special guest and regular guest. So you get to be both special and regular, which is fantastic.
I like that.
Bridget Gleason, right?
I like that. Andy, good morning. I always love when I listen to these podcasts, listening to you do welcome to Accelerate. You've got such enthusiasm, and it is very contagious.
Oh, good. Well, hopefully people that listening get the same, catch the same contagion, I guess.
Yeah, very contagious.
Oh, good. So today, what I thought we'd talk about is a topic we haven't delved into before, and you rarely hear any sort of talk about this or read anything about this. Is what do you do when you make a really big mistake with a prospect? How do you recover? When you blow it, basically, with a big prospect, an important opportunity, or any opportunity. What do you do to come back from that? Is it possible? And if it's possible, what are the steps you should take to sort of make it right again?
It's funny, Andy, that it doesn't get talked about more because it happens all the time. It's a natural, normal part of sales. It's not what we like to talk about. We like to talk about the wins, but there are losses. And when I say losses, I mean losses along the way. Setbacks along the way. And I think that that's what you're talking about here is when you blow it, what do you do? And in a SaaS business, the sale never really ends because in SaaS, oftentimes customers are on month-to-month contracts. Mm-hmm. And even after the sale ends, you're still selling.
Oh, yeah.
So it's even more important to address this because you're just always in this continuous loop and this continuous cycle of trying to engage and re-engage. And if you lost the sale and they went to someone else, if you blew it at the very last minute, oftentimes you've got a chance to win them back when that contract comes back. The contract, let's say that maybe they did sign, for example, a 12-month contract. You do have an opportunity to win them back in 12 months.
Yeah, and I was even talking about, how do you, while you're still in the game, how do you recover to try to win the deal, even without letting, a month or 12 months go by? I mean, this came to mind the other day because I was telling the story. Somebody asked me about sort of one of the most difficult negotiation situations I'd ever been in. And, I was recalling the story is at one point I was negotiating this really large deal with one of the largest media companies in the United States. This is for a custom developed communications network. And they were going to buy this several hundred network stations. Each one cost about, our proposal price was $7,500 a piece. So it was, a couple $1 million deal. And it had been a pretty complex negotiation, a lot of moving pieces. And I had gone with a colleague with the account manager, and I was the VP of sales. I went with the account manager and met with the customer over a course of 2 days at their offices, and they had their senior VP in charge of this whole division was their prime negotiator that I was working with. And it was pretty intense back and forth over 2 days, and the deal was done.
Or so you thought.
Yeah, so I thought. So at the end of the second day, as we were we were on the East Coast, and my headquarters is on the West Coast. As we're just wrapping up around 5 p.m., I get a call. And on the phone were my colleagues back in the factory, Vice President of Engineering, VP of Marketing, and the CEO. And I sort of pick up and say, I didn't expect to get a call from them. And this was sort of unusual. And in this very hushed voice, the VP of Marketing says, "Hey, Andy, are you alone? Can we talk?" And I said, "Well, okay, let me step outside just a second." Sure. So I excuse myself and go outside. And they said, "Well, so how's it going?" I said, "Well, it's good. We've got the deal done." And there was sort of this silence on the other end of the phone. And And I said, well, what's the problem? And they said, well, yeah, we got a bit of an issue. And I said, well, that doesn't sound good. And they said, well, it really isn't, because, we were just reviewing the cost estimates for the system that we proposed to them. And we discovered a math error. And I'm sitting like, trying to be calm. I said, okay, well, tell me more. And they said, well, it's actually kind of a big math error. I said, like, how big? Well, our cost estimates on the product were off by a factor of 2. And I said, what? I was like, yeah, we're sorry, but yeah, we just can't support the $7,500 price. We'd lose our shirts. And it was a venture funded startup, and the margin dollars are really important. I mean, the top line is important, but the bottom line is really important at this point as well. And I said, are you kidding me? I literally spent 120 days with this prospect, very intensively. We'd been talking to them actually for about a year. But the last 2 days, I had to defend our price at $7,500. And now you're telling me at the 11th hour that it needs to be $15,000? Sort of. And they said, yeah, unfortunately. And I said, well, as I left the room, our counterpart, this SVP, was getting on the phone with the CEO of this large media company, telling him the deal was done. What should I do?
This is a great story, Andy. I'm at the edge of my office chair listening to this.
And I said, well, what do you want me to do? And they said, well, maybe you should catch him before he makes that call. So we really didn't have a choice. I mean, it really was either go back in and renegotiate the deal and ask for double the price on the hardware, or walk away from it. And this was a deal we had forecasted to the board that we were going to get.
Right.
And
anywhere that's a big deal.
Well, yeah, especially for a startup at that point. We were about a $20 million a year company on a fairly rapid growth ramp. Taking $2 to $3 million out of that was really going to be a problem. And so, what would you have had me do at that point? I'll turn it. So we'll have a little build the suspense a little bit. What would you do at that point?
Well, I mean, Andy, I've been in that situation, not nearly so dramatic. One of the times when I had made the math error, which was even worse. So it was my own math error that I gave to a customer and then had to go back and defend. So I would say 2 things. I would say, one, internally, is this really the best we can do? We need to know what our floor is. And I think in any time in a negotiation, you have to know what the floor is. And so if the floor is really that it can't be supported unless it's double, then that's what the floor is. Sometimes the company says, you know what, it's worth it for us to do this. We're not going to lose money on this particular one, but we can see us making it up. So I don't know what the internal situation of the company was. And
it was get the $15,000 or we're going to have to walk.
Okay. And then the second is going back and having a conversation with a candid, transparent conversation with the customer around the value and how this is the reality of it. I don't know how you could do anything other than that. There aren't a lot of choices in this situation.
Well, no, as it turned out, there really weren't. And so
I mean, I don't like there aren't a lot of choices unless you just go silent and you ghost them as they talk today and just stop talking to them altogether, which wouldn't have a good outcome.
No, and this was fairly high profile. So I there was sort of this long silence on the phone as I was digesting this news, and the guys back in the factory basically were just anxious to get off the phone, and I was sort of like, okay, good luck, hung up.
Yeah, of course. Right. Go sell.
So this was literally the worst customer interaction I ever had, is to go back in that room to the senior vice president, who in turn had just committed to a CEO that he had gotten the deal done. I wasn't able to catch him before I made that call. And say basically that, I'm really sorry to have to have to bring this up at this late hour, and I can only imagine what you're going to think. But, this was the guys in a factory, and I just laid it out. I said, there had been a math error in a spreadsheet, and, we had looked at it and looked at it and looked at it, and no one had caught it until just now. And unfortunately, we just can't support that $7,500 price. And and of course, the first question was, well, what price can you support? And when I said the 15,000, oh yeah. I mean, I'd rarely been in a situation where people in business get so upset they're screaming at you. But
I've had that.
This was one of those times where justifiably
they're screaming.
they were screaming, and red at the face, and called, and understandably so. I mean, they thought we were baiting and switching them, which, had not been the case, but it was inexperience, lack of attention to detail on the, the team's part in terms of, checking all of our numbers 2-3 times, make sure they were right, which they had, but this thing had just slipped through. And, it was personally mortifying, as you might expect, to have to represent that to the customer. And I said the guys just understandably went nonlinear, and it was very, very tense for about half an hour. I mean, I just let him vent and didn't try to defend it at all, but just let him get everything out. And so you just have to sit there. And so one of the piece of advice I give to people when you make a mistake, and it's an honest mistake, as you would hope these are, but they have consequences, is you sit there and take your medicine. And as you said, be transparent. Don't try to defend or make excuses. It just, at that point, it is what it is. And so he went through it and then literally threw us out of his office.
Yes, I can picture this. I understand it. I've had my own situations similar. Okay, so he threw you out of the office. Mm-hmm. He threw you out, and
so yeah, I was supposed to take a red-eye flight back to the West Coast.
And I'm sure you were pretty frustrated and angry as well.
Well, yeah, I was humiliated more than anything else because, I had, represented one thing faithfully for, a long time, and then the situation changed and I had no control over it. And, I felt like my own integrity was being questioned, which is, at the end of the day, that's all you have in life, really, is your integrity, your good name.
Right.
And so I can understand why he was upset, but you still feel humiliated, deflated, and so on. So, we walked out of there. First thing I did was he didn't even commit to talking the next day. But I did say, look, I'm going to cancel my plans. I'm going to stay out here on the East Coast. And, if you want to talk tomorrow, here's my phone number. Call me direct, and maybe we get together for coffee in the morning. So, sort of an anxious morning. And, the lower level people that have been our sponsors within that organization, they were even more upset, I think, than he was, because it also, they saw their careers flashing in front of their eyes because they had been our sponsors. But, late in the morning, actually, and I did get a call from, my counterpart and said, this is a really important project for us. Let's talk. We're not prepared to see it go away. We're not happy. Believe us, we're not happy, but we're not prepared to see it go away. Let's talk. So with that door open, after another day and a half of conversation, we won the deal at $15,000 a unit.
And Andy, there's a couple things in here that I think are worth noting, and you've brought up a couple of them. I mean, one I think to note is you'd obviously built a good relationship already to be able to go through this, that there was a level of trust there had to have been a level
Yes.
of trust
Yes.
already built. So I think that is a critical component to keep in mind just as you're going through a sales process. Number two is you'd obviously already established the value. Because if you hadn't established the value, solidly established the value through the sales process, this would have fallen apart. Okay, so that would be number two. Number three, this level of transparency. This is what happened, and not and the other piece to that, which is as important, is a non-defensiveness, not trying to defend it, not this is just it. This is it. You were as taken aback as they were, but there was no defensiveness around it. And then I think the openness to let them go through this run of emotions that they needed to. We're all human. So we bring a lot of emotion to the table in everything we do. We're human. Letting them run through this emotion and then being open to coming back and having a conversation really on their terms when they were ready to do it, and making yourself available, and also being open to the possibility that this deal was still on the table. You weren't giving up on this either. You didn't give up, and a lot of people would have given up.
Oh yeah, and I think that's one of the lessons for people. As you gave 4 great ones, summaries of things that happened, and so when we did get back together, is one of the things that I had prepared is, and they had similarly prepared, is looking at what the impact was, because they were going to in turn take the system and as part of a service that they were reselling to their customers, is that over the lifetime of the contract that they had with their customers, the increase in the hardware price had a fairly nominal impact on their margins over the life of those contracts. Mm-hmm. So that turned out to be a positive in our on our side.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't like it was no impact, but it was one that they could live with in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, the value was still there, but yeah, if the personal relationship hadn't been established beforehand, it might have been irretrievably ruptured, and there might have been no hope going forward. But we had, in general, we thought, been dealing with them openly and transparently throughout the entire process, and that did build up that relationship, as you talked about. So they understood that after their anger got through, is that they understood that it was an honest mistake. Now, sometimes honest mistakes notwithstanding, people still don't want to do business with you in those circumstances because maybe it doesn't show sufficient attention to detail. But in this case, we confronted it head on, and as I said, after some of the worst hour of my life, it actually turned out to be okay.
Well, and you, in talking about a relationship, and there's in sales a lot of talk about relationship building and how relationships are important in sales. And I think what people often misunderstand, especially if they're new to sales, is relationships aren't built on, hey, let's get together and go to the ball game. Hey, we're really friendly. How's your dog? Hey, relationships are built on mutual trust and mutual value in the relationship. And again, those are two things that it was obvious that you had cultivated over the course of working on that deal, that the relationship built on both trust and value was there, which enabled you to recover from this mistake that was not even your own, but mistake that the company actually had made. And I think that's a key one, that if we're going to, if we blow it with a prospect, probably the most critical thing, Andy, is what's happened before that. Mm-hmm. It's what's built before that will allow this, really essentially this relationship to recover. And in not all circumstances will it have an outcome like yours did. It could be that you went back to them and they said, hey, we get it, but we actually, this is sort of the max of what we're able to do at this time. And we're forced to look at other vendors or solutions because we've got some fiscal constraints that don't let us pay double, even though we understand it's an honest mistake. So it's not that even if you have a great relationship built, that in 100% of the cases, you can get over something like that. But I would say it will be extremely difficult to get over it if you haven't built that trust and value along the way.
Right. And a perfect exemplification of that is that same customer, actually, the people that were the internal advocates for it. When I changed, I went to a different company, a different startup that I was VP of sales for, is they came back to that company for the next project they were doing. So, if you build that relationship, and if you're open, honest, it's really how you handle the screw-ups in many ways that really dictate the course of the relationship you have with a customer, because there are always going to be screw-ups at some point in time. In any sort of business relationship, nothing goes smoothly from start to finish. And how you own that problem really makes a huge difference. I mean, I've had clients that they've had mistakes that we've made, but just on how we handled the mistake is what ended up generating referrals for us.
Well, do you know, Andy, you've probably heard this also, but when things go smoothly, when you take, let's say, a customer satisfaction score and things go smoothly, customers tend to give, let's say on average, companies a 6, maybe a 7, and things have gone smoothly. Mm-hmm. When there's been a problem and you're able to recover from the problem, the satisfaction scores go 8, 9, 10. And so actually, you have the ability, there's a great opportunity in building a bigger champion after a mistake. And when things don't go smoothly, than there is if things just sort of hum along as you would expect. And so I always like to look at what's the opportunity when there's been a mistake to build actually a bigger champion, because it's how do we recover from this in this partnership that actually can create a lot of strength in the relationship. And it sounds like in the situation that you're describing, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I think people sort of feel at that point like they've gone through the battles together, right? That there's this common bond from having survived this trial by fire and coming through it together.
And it's good to know in this relationship, what does it look like when there's an issue, and how is this partner going to respond? And I certainly, I think about my own experiences when I've had, let's say, customer service issues, and a particular store, let's say it's Nordstrom's is a great example. I've had an issue with a product, and I go back to Nordstrom's and say, this, my shirt, the first wash and it fell apart. Mm-hmm. They take it back, no question. Right. I have a stronger feeling towards, in this case, Nordstrom's, because of how they handled something that didn't go well. I didn't like that the shirt fell apart. And that makes me a more loyal customer because I understand how they are going to behave when there's an issue. And I think, as you said, there are going to be issues. There are going to be bumps in the road. And being able to demonstrate, here's what you can expect from me and my team and my company when these things happen, goes a huge way toward, or has the potential for really going a long way towards strengthening a relationship and making it stronger than it would have been had something like this not occurred. Although that was a very, very dark day.
It was a very dark evening for sure.
No days or evenings that you want to create. Those happen, but boy, God, do you just want to get through them as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. You can only imagine like a conversation like maybe a physician having to tell a patient they only have a couple of months to live or something. Right? It's one of these just horrible horrible conversations that you can't really contemplate having. But yeah, you have no choice but to dive in and deal with it forthrightly and honestly. And as you had mentioned, I mean, it reflects on what you do, but the customer is going to make their decision based really on how you handled that situation. And yeah, it could have gone either way. And I think if we had been defensive, if we had perhaps approached a different manner, trying to deflect the mistake, then yeah, we would have lost all credibility. The relationship would have been split, and there would have been nothing that would have gone forward. But anyway, lesson for people is even in your toughest situations, deal with it openly, honestly, continue with the level of integrity that you started with, and you get a chance to recover and take the second chance and run with it.
That's right.
All
That's right.
Well,
That's a great story. Great story, Andy. I loved it.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad you liked it. Hope everybody else did too. And hopefully they don't have to experience something similar. So, Bridget, as always, it's been great to talk with you. And we want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in today and listening to us. We hope they continue to do that every Friday and every day of the week with Accelerate. So we'll look forward to talking to you again next Friday.
Wonderful. Have a great rest of the week and weekend.
All right. And thank you, everybody else, for tuning in today. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.